Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Jimmy Wilford, SAYWHAT Executive Director, SAYWHAT Management and staff from various higher and tertiary institutions, judges, guests, and students. It is a privilege for me, as Miranda Tabifo, on behalf of the United Nations Population Fund, the Sexual and Reproductive Health Agency here in Zimbabwe, to be present and to welcome all of you to the awards ceremony for the Speak and Solve Initiative SASI Debate Challenge in Zimbabwe in 2024. As we gather here today, I'm reminded that young people are not passive recipients of the world's problems, but they are active agents of change. Their innovative ideas, energy, and determination demonstrated throughout the challenge shows immense potential within young people to lead the way for a better society. The theme for this year's debate challenge is Opposing Views, Same Goal, Unleashing Innovative Solutions for Sustainable Development, which emphasizes the development of fresh and creative perspectives to improving young people's lives and health of the planet. The theme resonates strongly with the principles that the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, supports to advance sustainable development goals for a better, healthier, more equitable, and more sustainable future. And more so because this is also UNFPA's 30th anniversary year, where we are celebrating 30 years of the International Conference on Population and Development Program of Action. I'm overjoyed to see young people as active architects of the 2030 agenda, supporting its implementation with the inter-institutional debate battle. As we are into the 4th year of the decade of action, I want to applaud SAYWHAT for producing the 7th edition of the SASI debate competition and the continuous effort to equip young people as agents who can advance the resilience of their communities. During the challenge, young people shared their ideas on how best to accelerate progress on achieving the global goals. In an extremely young country like Zimbabwe, where young people below age 25 years constitute more than 60% of the population, the competition offered young people a platform for solutions-focused discussions. The key messages and recommendations gathered during the debate will help inform regional and other global events, such as the upcoming Southern Africa Regional Students and Youth Conference, as well as the Summit of the Future. I envision the next generation of reproductive health advocates. Distinguished guests, in closing, I challenge all viewers, students, youth to understand sustainable development goals, the targets, and how you can contribute to them. As future leaders, you have the power to be involved in the implementation, monitoring of relevant legislation, policies, services, and programs affecting your lives. The United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, remains available to work with SAYWHAT and other like-minded organizations to ensure that young people reach their potential. A big congratulations to the winning team of the 7th edition of this unique debate challenge. Go and communicate the 2020-2030 agenda to your peers and communities at the local level, in the country, and beyond the borders. Thank you.
We find ourselves standing in no man's land. Brace yourself for a battle of intellect, a knowledge extravaganza like never before. Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome. This is the 7th edition of the SASI debate, proudly brought to you by SAYWHAT and supported by the Swedish Embassy in Zimbabwe. My name is Miss Jones, and I am your debate mistress. Joining me today on stage are 4 prestigious universities. Teams, please introduce yourselves, starting from podium 1 all the way to podium 4. Podium 1.
Good morning. My name is Leslie Ngube, and I will be the Prime Minister.
Good morning. I'm Tatenda Alexio Shambare, and I'll be your Deputy Prime Minister from HIT.
My name is Fian. I'm from Great Zimbabwe University. I'm going to be the leader of opposition.
Hello, my name is Tari, and I'm from Great Zimbabwe University. I'm going to be the Deputy Leader of Opposition.
Good morning, my name is Polite Banda from MUAST, and I'm going to be the Member of Government.
Good morning, my name is Tendai Sairai from MUAST. I'm going to be the Chief Whip.
Good morning, my name is Tanato Magwaza, and I'm going to be the Member of Opposition.
Good morning, my name is Nathan Loku from Manicaland State University of Applied Sciences, and I will be the Deputy Member of Opposition.
Now that we're well acquainted, welcome aboard. Let the games begin. This debate will follow the British parliamentary style. The rules are, each participant will be given exactly 4 minutes to present their case. Points of information are allowed. However, if your point of information has been denied, you have to wait for exactly 30 seconds before requesting for a second opportunity. With that being said, the motion reads: this House, as the Global South countries, would adopt nation-specific approaches rather than collective efforts in achieving SDGs. This House, as the Global South countries, would adopt nation-specific approaches rather than collective efforts in achieving SDGs. The motion has been set. Prime Minister, the ball is now in your court.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you personally ask a tailor to make a trousers that doesn't fit your body or meet your body type? Then why would we expect countries to do the same? Southern African countries are not children that they need hand-holding in achieving SDGs. We specifically know what we need to do. So, when Southern countries have nation-specific approaches to achieving SDGs, it provides relevancy because different countries experience certain different problems. Therefore, some points on the SDGs apply more to certain countries, and therefore we cannot stretch our resources to meet SDGs that do not affect our country more. When the SDGs are nation-specific, this provides a stronger self of self or me. It provides the countries with a stronger sense of ownership of the approaches to SDGs. This stops the SDGs from looking like an agenda that is imposed on a person and instilling resistance in countries. This gives the country a sense of accountability in achieving the SDGs, and this improves the political commitment of those countries. Nation-specific approaches allow individual countries to be able to experiment with different strategies. Ladies and gentlemen, when you are given a trousers by a certain person, you cannot alter that. Denied. You cannot alter that SDG, you cannot alter that trousers to be able to fit yourself because it is not yours. So if SDGs are nation-specific, the countries are able to alter the SDGs and experiment with different methods because there is not one way of achieving the SDGs. Nation-specific approaches allow countries to leverage domestic expertise better, institutions, and resources. We as southern countries know the expertise that we dwell more on. We know our strong points. We know where our resources are more. And we know the institutions that we have and the abilities we are able to provide. Therefore, with nation-specific approaches to SDGs, we can align to the national approaches and be nation-specific. With nation-specific approaches to SDGs, the countries can allocate resources more efficiently. In this way, ladies and gentlemen, we can facilitate more effective partnerships between governments and international organizations that are in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, when we know the resources that we have, we can, and we know the SDGs that apply more to our countries, we can allocate more resources to the SDGs that affect and can be easily made correct in our country and allocate our resources more towards those SDGs. It also empowers the countries to take charge of their development journey in achieving the SDGs. There is better data collection and relevant data. When we look at a small population, we are able to collect more data and able to statistically analyze this data more and reduce data smog. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, I say unto you, let us tailor these SDG trousers to our own specifications as southern countries. I thank you.
Let us tailor our own trousers. That was the Prime Minister stating her case. Up next, Leader of Opposition, please take center stage.
Panel, we think it's important for us to look at what exactly the Global South countries look like, first of all, within this debate, and we also have to look at the current status quo of SDGs and the progress that we've taken in achieving those SDGs as the Global South countries. We don't get that kind of characterization from any government, and they seem to not have meaningful arguments because of lack of that particular characterization, right? We need to look at Global South countries as countries that are facing the same problems, right? Problems like famine, problems like lack of economic stability, lack of political stability, lack of social stability, poor resource allocation, right? We're looking at countries that are facing things like famine, right? Hunger, poverty, all of those kind of things. Brazil, Zimbabwe, Angola, Zambia, all of those kind of things. They have similar problems, right? And in as much as we get the fact that they have similar problems, we still think that they're going to need global help in order for them to achieve SDGs, right? What do we say? So first of all, let me deal with the arguments that we get from opening government. Opening government tells us that different countries have different problems, and as such, we need to have different solutions from countries maybe in Europe or in America, right? We're going to address this by telling you about government duty to, first of all, to its people, and then first of all to the international community and the treaties that they sign and they are mandated to upkeep and uphold and keep their practices in alignment with, right? But then they also tell us that it gives the countries a sense of accountability and there's going to be resource allocation. Then again, we question what resources exactly I talk about from the Global South, because already there's a strain on those resources. In most instances, it's usually the Western countries that are giving resources to these Global South countries and never us giving to them, right? So at the end of the day, it's going to benefit us to partner with these global communities because it helps us at the end of the day. It's rare for us to say that Zimbabwe is given $1 billion in aid to France, right, in order to achieve a certain SDG SDG, but it's very common to have Western countries give us aid because we do need that aid in order to achieve SDGs, and that's why global partnership is important. But then lastly, they tell us that we need to experiment with different strategies. And then we ask, how long, since time immemorial, right, they've been experimenting with different strategies, and they've since failed to take good care of their people. They've failed to implement policies that work for their own countries, right? And we think when we set the SDGs as a global community, right, it was to say, okay, fine, we acknowledge that certain things, right, cannot be done by a single government, and we are going to talk about this when I give you the argument about government capacity, right? So what exactly are we saying as team opening opposition in this debate? We're telling you that, first of all, there's a need to analyze government capacity, right? We tell you that global South countries, right, are characterized by governments that don't have like their own financial resources or economic resources to say we can deal with these problems on our own, right? But at the end of the day, they're going to need help from the international community. That's why we see we have a lot of NGOs that partner with people within those underdeveloped countries, right? Within those still developing countries. That's why we still see that there's need for foreign aid. That's why we still see that there's need for all of those things, because at the end of the day, we have to recognize that in as much as we say, we want ownership, we want a sense of accountability, we can't achieve all of those things on our own. These are global goals at the end of the day, right? They are global goals for a reason, right? It doesn't mean that the government is going to ignore its own mandate to the people to say that, okay, fine, we're not going to have a ministry in order for us to achieve these things. They're still going to be in place in your own countries. They still have a mandate to the people, right? But we're saying that the government also has a mandate to the international community. When you sign a treaty, right, you are now bound by it, right, as a government. And that means you have to abide by those principles that I learned with those treaties. When you join an international organization like the United Nations, it means you abide by the things that you set, the standards that you set for yourselves as countries, right? And therefore, we don't think that separating yourself from the global community is going to do you any good. We say that the point in time at which, as a country or as a global South, right, you say, fine, we're going to separate ourselves from the global community, right, it's still going to influence you negatively, because at the end of the day, there's still going to be subdivisions, whereby as Zimbabweans, we're going to say, okay, fine, we're different from Argentina in such a way that we face different problems. And as such, you're still going to have further subdivisions, but still you want to achieve the same goal. So we don't exactly see how exactly this is going to benefit the individuals, right? But then lastly, we tell you about how the SDGs interlink and the intertwine, right? That is to say, when you solve like certain SDGs, right, when you look at SDGs about climate change, right, you're going to see that climate change is affecting everyone on the globe. And when you seek to achieve like a reduction in things like climate change, you're going to achieve a reduction in things like famine, which is affecting countries in the global south themselves, right? And this is not an action that is going to be taken by Zimbabwe or South Africa alone, but by the global communities. With this, we'll have been more proud to oppose. Thank you.
And that was the leader of opposition passionately stating his case. And now, to those who will come to the floor, the Deputy Prime Minister. Deputy Prime Minister, the floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, how many times must history repeat itself before we learn? Colonialism and structural adjustment programs, they've all promised salvation. But what have they left us with? With breadcrumbs from the table of Geneva. We are nations with history, with our own strength, our own path to forge. We need agency, not handouts. Community-led initiatives are not charity. They are a lifeblood of sustainable development. Let's take, for instance, programs like Campfire, programs that empower rural people to manage their own wildlife. To the grassroots of irrigation projects that feed our families, that's the solutions from our very own soil of Zimbabwe, not from the boardrooms of Geneva. Our traditions are not obstacles. They are opportunities of indigenous knowledge passed down through generation and holds the keys to sustainable agriculture, water conservation, and harmonious living with nature. We must honor our heritage, not to discard for imported solutions that do not fit our land. Zimbabwe's COVID-19 vaccine development program is a major example. How would we have survived in the COVID-19 if we had not discovered Zumbani? Would we have solely relied on the vaccines from the other countries? Take a moment to reflect. Let's dive into Pombodza. How has it been impacting all the farmers with the inputs in rural areas? These are our own very own solutions. The leader of the opposition stressed much more on the little resources that we have. Zimbabwe is one of the leading exporters of gold. We are rich in minerals in Zimbabwe. We have enough resources to do our own things. Let's take for an instance. If tomorrow comes another pandemic, are we going to rely on them to discover a solution for us? Are we going to wait another month for them to give us another vaccine? We have to take our own initiative. International aid is often poised with chalice. It comes with strings attached, with endless red tape, with consultants who parachute in and then disappear. Take how the Chinese have been operating in all the other remote areas here in Zimbabwe. We have recently started mining platinum, but it's our own. But yet they are the ones who are benefiting more. Ladies and gentlemen, Zimbabwe is not a textbook case. We are a nation with unique history, complex present, and uncertain future. We need a tailored solution, not a cookie-cutter program. Ignore the ignorances on the ground. Fumbudza is not perfect, but it's ours. It's homegrown solution and adapted to climate of our soil, our own people. Thank you.
That was the Deputy Prime Minister stating his case. Next, we've got the Deputy Leader of Opposition. Please take center stage.
Panel, I do not understand how this debate moved from being an SDG Global South countries debate to a Zimbabwean case study as painted by the government. The government takes the stance of addressing SDGs as foreign ideas that are being imposed on Global South countries to disrupt their sovereignty, when in actual fact, in 2012, Global South countries consented to the ideas of SDGs. They advocate for continuous experiments which have indeed failed, and we're going to prove that in this debate, but yet they speak of urgency. And it is important to address that SDGs do not quite take anything away from Global South countries like history and Zombani. It's fine, you can keep your Zombani, but we are going to fund the SDGs for development to go forward. They painted a one-sided picture of how Zimbabwe needs a lot from the international community as a whole, but did not educate this august house on how the international community, including the Global South countries, work together. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I am going to paint a picture of what Global South countries look like. They lack resources, they lack financial will, they lack expertise, they have poor economies and poor political landscapes, and are characterized by dire corruption. And let's look at them before SDGs. There was no progress. But what have SDGs done? SDGs have brought about independent civic society organizations or non-governmental organizations that have actually fast-tracked the progress of what Global South countries have failed to do. For example, the alleviation of HIV and AIDS itself started skyrocketing in 2015 when we have civic society organizations like the Global Fund coming into the picture. The thing with SDGs is they're intertwined and they're interdependent. They're a fair representation of problems that are universal and common to everyone. And just because a problem is specific specifically prominent in one part of the world does not therefore translate to the idea that all the other problems cease to exist. As an example, if we are assisted in addressing goal 2, which is zero hunger, then we have addressed goal 8, which is decent work and economic growth. We've also addressed reduced inequalities, which is goal 10, and goal 1, which is no poverty. Focusing on nation-specific goals will only complicate the global tracking process, and it will restrict international support and take away the sense of unity, because after all, SDG number 17, to which Global South countries consented to, speaks of partnership to the goals. So at the end of the day, we are not taking away anything, and this whole fallacious examples that government brought to this podium about Chinese mining, about this and that, have got nothing to do with SDGs. These are completely different matters. And on another point, the world has become one because of the effect of globalization, and something that is happening in a completely different part of the world, its effects and its repercussions can be felt in another part of the world. For example, we have Zimbabweans and South African SDG advocates pushing SDG number 16 of peace because of what is happening in Ukraine or because of what is happening in Pakistan, but they have never actually felt the effect, or they've never been in the middle of war themselves. So we have shared burdens, even if we do not have the lived experiences. So it is a very bad idea to adopt the approach of nation-specific goals, because it was just going to take us to step 1 at the end of the day.
That was the Deputy Leader of Opposition. Up next, Member of Government, please take center stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, we should understand that the Global South countries is not a monolith. It has diverse countries which face a diversity of problems. For example, the problems that are faced in India are different from the problems that are faced in a small nation like Fiji. The leader of opposition has said that we share same problems. Of course, we agree. We share same problems in terms of climate change, but we are saying that we are not deviating from the development goals, but we're only tailoring them to suit our most pressing needs. For example, in Zimbabwe, we have the new currency, the ZiG, which is backed by gold. Of course, the SDGs are emphasizing on environmental sustainability, but I would also like to argue that the majority of the small-scale miners in Zimbabwe are the ones that bring in gold. So we are saying that we are only alleviating the problems of inflation that were being faced by Zimbabwe. So we are not deviating from the sustainable development goals, but we're only tailoring them to meet our specific needs at specific times. Okay, so the leader of opposition also emphasized on lack of resources. I correct you there. We as the global Southeastern countries do not lack resources. We have vast resources. We only need innovation ideas, which are being counterparted by the fact that we are trying to adopt global strategies instead of focusing more on our indigenous knowledge systems. The opening government talked about accountability and ownership. If we have tailored solution for each country, there is a sense of accountability and ownership. For example, in Ethiopia, they had an afforestation program which improved food security as well as combating the effects of climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, tailored solutions have immediate impact as compared to global solutions. For example, the issue of climate change has been discussed for over 20 years. But what is happening right now? Are the effects of climate change declined? We also like to support that resources are allocated more efficiently when we are tailoring SDGs to suit the specific needs of each country. Ladies and gentlemen, what am I saying? We allocate our funds, our resources, the ones that we have, to the most pressing needs at the specific time, not necessarily saying that we are deviating from the set goals, okay? The leader of opposition also said that we are failing to implement the SDGs. No, ladies and gentlemen, we are not failing to implement the SDGs. We are only addressing those that are pressing, the ones that are affecting us more at a time. They also talked about getting funds from international corporations. Of course, we get funds from international organizations, but that does not mean that we should address the goal that they want us to address at a specific time. Ladies and gentlemen, I feel like the global south countries are diverse, they have diverse problems, so they should implement according to what is more pressing at a specific time. So I also would like to stress the point that they say that the SDGs have the same goals, so same problems require shared solution. I beg to differ on that point because we should not adopt a one-size-fits-all strategy because the global Southeastern countries is diverse. It's not a monolith. It's got a lot of problems that differ from region to region. I thank you.
That was the member of government stating her case. Up next, member of opposition, please take center stage.
In the first half, we saw the opening government who came here and talked of the fact that we are family and that we are one, but they're also talking of isolating ourselves from other countries, from other nations, from global help. And so I would like to ask this question. Globally, if we're saying we're family, if we're saying we are one, does that not mean that in addressing our problems, we need all hands on deck, ladies and gentlemen? This is a very problematic policy because when we are saying that we want to address these problems, nation specifically, we are talking about missing the opportunities for holistic solutions, ladies and gentlemen, where holistic solutions are comprehensive and are interconnected approaches that consider the entirety of the system or the problem. Where we are saying that when we are having problems that are sort of like a tree, and yet we are saying that we want to be tackling these problems branch by branch, or we want to be tackling them leaf by leaf instead of tackling them from the root, ladies and gentlemen. When we are talking about global south countries, we are talking about countries that are suffering literally almost the same challenges, or they're in one broad group where we are saying that these are challenged countries or low economically developed countries that we are trying to help because we are saying no one is going to be left behind, ladies and gentlemen. So we need holistic approaches, but we are not getting that from a side government because they are talking about isolating themselves in the name of global south countries not being children that need to be held by the hand. And yet we are saying these are countries that are suffering from certain things that economically developed countries are not suffering from and hence are able to help them with, right? So it's just like in the context of healthcare, ladies and gentlemen, we have to understand the whole of the body instead of just attacking the immediate symptoms, right? Let's say, for example, there's a drought in a certain country and we are saying, let's just tackle that in that nation that they are suffering. And yet we have other problems that are causing that problem that we need to address globally because we are saying no one is going to be left behind. We want to sustain the entire globe because we are one family, ladies and gentlemen. So this is ineffective in addressing areas like terrorism and targeted violence because these are problems that are suffering, these are southern these global south countries are suffering from. And yet these are problems that do not even respect boundaries, ladies and gentlemen. And also, on our side of the bench, we are saying that we are providing collective efforts, and these collective efforts, they result in a comprehensive intelligence sharing, because we are saying we are not working as single individuals. We're not working together in helping each other so that we go together as a globe. So we get comprehensive intelligence sharing, which allows for pooling and sharing of intelligence resources, which is crucial in identifying and addressing potential threats, because we are saying we do not just want to solve things for the now, we want to give the people food for tomorrow. And also, since their side of the bench is bringing problems that cause limited impact on complex issues, for example, like climate change and global securities, we are saying when we have international collaboration and agreements, like for example, the Paris agreements, which can facilitate collective action on a global scale to address climate change and environmental degradation, multiple nations can now work together to set targets and implement strategies. And then there we can now protect our environment as we are trying to do with SDG 13. So, ladies and gentlemen, I say that we just put our hands together because we need all the help we can get. We cannot leave the global south countries to do these things for themselves, because we need each other as a family. Thank you.
That was the member of opposition stating her case. Up next, Government Whip, please take center stage.
Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. These are the words of the popular reggae artist Bob Marley on his song, Redemption Song. Ladies and gentlemen, we have heard the opposition side talking about, they said, Chinese mining, of which the government side, we never gave that example, meaning they are trying to divert us from the main cause of the debate. They talked about corruption of managing resources, but they never gave us a case study of where corruption has happened, and it has led to detrimental effects in as far as nation-specific approaches to SDGs is concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, they also talked about failing to implement SDGs. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg to differ, because in Zimbabwe, we have programs like Fumbuza, as the opening government has said. It is helping us to feed the nation in achieving SDG number 1. They continue to define global south countries without giving much of example of what global countries are. Words without examples, ladies and gentlemen, are nothing. Hence, rejected. Words, as I was saying, ladies and gentlemen, words without examples are nothing, and their ideas should be buried 6 feet under the ground. Coming to resuscitate the points which have been raised by my side, we have a common say in Shona that says mbeva zhinji hadzina mashe, meaning to say a collective idea sometimes cannot bring a solution which are affecting the people. We have the Devolution Fund, ladies and gentlemen, which focuses on resource allocation based on provincial levels, and we have seen provinces benefiting from these devolution funds. We have districts like Buera, which bought their own tractors using the devolution fund. We also have each provinces bought their own vehicles using the devolution fund. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is important to note that if we focus on individual levels, we are able to achieve the SDGs. We talked about the Fiji effect, whereby they are facing rising sea levels. So we cannot have a collective idea to solve that. For example, we are saying Fiji and Zimbabwe come together to solve rising sea levels, of which Zimbabwe is a landlocked country. We are not affected by such issues. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Ethiopia, which is doing afforestation to combat climate change as well as reclaiming their soil. We also have innovation, best practices, because culturally we all know that we have different cultures which have different means of doing their own things. So by focusing on each culture, we are able to achieve SDGs with this, I think.
That was the government whip stating his case. Up next, let's welcome the opposition whip.
Panel, we are here as the opposition and as the closing whip, as the opposition chief whip. I'm here to address and to summarize this debate. They have been saying, the government has been saying from the beginning, and I was listening carefully so that I would address their errors. So the first speaker, the Prime Minister, said, we are tailing an SDG trousers for Southern African countries, but I think global South countries are not only the Southern African countries, and also the government said, they wanted to address the wrong concept. The government said that they want to tailor these, they want to tailor these things to Southern African countries, but we are saying that
Point of information.
The Southern African countries are not only the global South countries, my panel. So we have our points, and we are saying that national specific approaches lead us to miss opportunities of holistic solutions. What are holistic solutions? Now, these are solutions that are comprehensive and interconnected approaches that consider the entirety of a system and problem taking into consideration or account all interconnected parts. We are not only looking into one part of the world, but we are looking into the whole world as the globe, my noble panel. And we are saying that we are solving this with holistic solutions, and we are coming in to solve this using that. So we are saying that the national specific approaches are leading to ineffective problem solving and inadequate utilization of resources. So I'll address some of the areas that the government has given to us, and I'll quote what the government whip said. They said we are not affected about the sea levels, but you see, many things are benefiting us from these countries, and we are affected in some sort of way. So what we are saying, we want to solve as a family, as my colleague said. So we declined. So we are saying that we want to work as a family. As far as you are saying Ethiopia is taking afforestation and doing all these things, but we are saying if we work together, we can gain more ground, we can gain more land than only one nation to gain their land. It will not impact the issue of climate change. So we are saying that we need to have all hands on deck. We need holistic approaches. We need to provide this. So my noble panel, we know that, and they also accuse us that we didn't define the global South. What are global South countries? But it was clear that we were defining this over and over again. So we have defined them, and we are saying that we are to hold hands and work as a family so that we solve global situations. Thank you.
The only thing worse than a bad idea is a good one that was never challenged. That was the opposition whip challenging the motion. And now we'll leave it up to the judges to deliberate.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for a lovely debate. I'll start with the call. Unanimously, we gave first to opening opposition, we gave second to opening government, we gave third to closing opposition, and we gave fourth to closing government. So thank you so much to everyone. Congratulations to the teams that ranked first, and commiserations to the teams that ranked lower. I think the biggest issue in the debate, firstly, on the team that got fourth and why you couldn't rank above anyone. I think the response wasn't necessarily sufficient. A lot of things are said in the debate by both opposition teams that we think that maybe you could have engaged on more and responded to. For example, issues surrounding how the issues to do with resources. Firstly, I think both opposition teams speak mostly on that idea and why it's important that we have some sort of capacitations for governments in order for them to be able to push forward the type of policies that you're talking about in the debate. But also we think that you failed to distinguish yourself from your opening. Most of your arguments were very derivative from the arguments that we had in opening government. For example, arguments to do with how global South countries don't have monolithic problems and that we need to tailor them to specifically suit our most pressing problems. These are all the same conclusions we get from opening government's case on how, in general, we know we have institutions that need to align with national policies and therefore allocate resources effectively in order to tailor those resources to our specific needs. So in many instances, when you're in closing, it's very important. I think we also saw that with closing opposition. It's very important for you to specifically try and separate yourself from the teams that are in opening, right? So that you don't make the exact same conclusions that were made in opening, so that we can differentiate, therefore, why your extension is far much more important than the analysis that we hear from the teams in opening, right? Let me quickly go to opening teams and why I think the debate happens there mostly. We get ideas from opening government on how this provides some sort of relevancy and that you want ownership for these global South countries, for them to feel like their problems are their own and therefore have solutions that they are proud of, solutions that they like. We get ideas also on how we need to, there's some sort of agency that is established by opening government as to why this ought to happen right now. I think OO is the only team that sufficiently responds to most of your arguments. Firstly, when they talk about the capacitation of these countries and resources in general, they say global South countries in many instances don't even have these resources that you're talking about. So you needed to do a little bit more in your policy, because this was a policy motion. We don't get a policy from opening government as to why this necessarily happens. The only reason we don't penalize you for that is because no one else calls you out for it in the debate, and also it doesn't necessarily become the most contentious issue in the debate. So just judging you on that, we really do think that we needed more analysis on your side as to why capacity in instance is the most important issue, right? We also don't penalize you for trying to squirrel the debate, because though that happened, especially in the second speech, we think that the Prime Minister had done enough in general to speak on why SDGs in the global South as a whole, outside of Zimbabwe as a country, was more important. But please be careful of that also in future, to try not to squirrel the debate to Zimbabwe when the debate is more about other countries like Fiji and Brazil, like what OO does, right? Also, arguments we get from OO that no one else in the debate necessarily responds to. They say that SDGs are intertwined and therefore climate issues in one country may affect climate issues in the other country, and they think that is more important in the debate. No responses to why, as adjudicators, we shouldn't care about that. So we thought that analysis remained very relevant in the debate. The second thing is they talk about how, in general, global South countries have relied on aid and like NGOs and donations, right? So in your world, no opposition team shows why that is something that we also ought not to care about. But why in your world that happening is something that is more preferable than the status quo, is argued by opening opposition. And then lastly, They say that the government has a mandate to the international community because of issues to do with shared burdens, right? And because you don't necessarily need to have shared lived experiences for you to specifically have some sort of shared burdens when it comes to how you choose to alleviate your problems necessarily. So why opening opposition wins? I think one, they're the team that responds the most to most of the arguments that we get from government teams, but we think that their arguments remain more relevant and more unique and unengaged by especially the teams in closing, which we thought that you could have done a little bit more to try and engage those ideas. But also for closing teams, we don't think you necessarily do enough to differentiate yourself from their opening. I think the one argument that places you guys third and not fourth and like ranks you above your closing is the idea on isolation and how you don't necessarily want countries isolated because inherently it harms them in the long term, right? So we did prioritize that argument, but comparatively looking at the team that comes second, we still think that a lot of ideas we get from them on accountability, on looking like agendas, on agendaring, right? Ideas to do with like ownership all remain unengaged. So please also be careful in your response speech to ensure that all those arguments are arguments that you engage on. Overall, it was a good debate. You can come to us way later for a more detailed feedback. So yeah, thank you everyone.
A big thank you to our adjudicators. And that brings us to the end of this debate. This is the Speak and Solve initiative, and I am Ms. Jones. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, goodbye.